New week, Monday, had year 12 for a double today, so 2-hour lesson. The Jarrah clothing rack thing, she got some marking out done for the pivot system for where her legs are going to be swiveling and where the hanging rail is going to be, and working out like his or her lower shelves and upper shelves. They're all trimmed for the most part, pieces that go between, so she's well on her way. We came up with a connecting system for that today, which will allow her to knock down her project for carrying it. And I had part of the connectors, but she needed some longer ones to be able to get through the thickness of these legs. So I found them online and ordered them today. Hopefully they don't take too long, since it's just a box of connectors. Some of these little boxes have started being glued together. The ironbark project, she did some rebate routing out today for the plywood panels. That was slow going so that she didn't burn it too much and that it didn't split. So she's got her two large panels done today. The two smaller panels get done tomorrow because we've got another 2-hour lesson in the morning. And from there, she might start working on actually putting those, or getting those marked out to put the main box together, or maybe cutting out the plywood panels. That all depends on the track saw, which I still haven't heard about. So maybe that won't happen. Still haven't got the track saw back from repairs. This big one's out of the clamps. Started getting marking out for drawer spacings and runners. Just going to do timber runners to cut down on the cost for themselves. All of the pieces for that other student that had the incident with the track saw, we ended up getting most of his pieces cut out. I used the table saw because there was only a couple of simple cuts that needed to be done. Kind of figured out some of his joining methods that he's going to be doing like housing and rebates and that sort of stuff with the router. So he'll be able to do that tomorrow. The student who's doing the island table, he was working on getting his legs shaped. I think he's put them away in the storeroom for safekeeping. So he was getting all the shaping of those sanded so that they're all the same, and starting to get those sanded smooth. And one of the other students wasn't here today. I've got them again for another 2-hour lesson tomorrow, middle of the day. Today's was the morning lesson. I want to see whether we've got material for his drawers, because he wants to use 12mm or 1/2 inch plywood. I don't have a full sheet, but I might have some stuff that we can use for that. I've got all those projects running through my head right now, so I'm sure I've been thinking about where each student is up to. Construction class got a bit more. They were a little bit wondering whether we're actually going to get down to do work on that formwork today, because it looked like it was going to rain. The sun came out in the recess break just beforehand. We went down. Because it had been raining, the ground was a lot softer, so they got a fair bit of that dug out. But then coming back up to the class to get them out, again, didn't get any video showing you that. The next time we're going to be down there is Thursday, so I'll try and show you what that's looking like then. They've got 2 hours on Thursday, so they might get quite a lot done. And hopefully we'll have a little bit more rain between now and then, and that'll really soften the ground up for them to basically dig that footing right down. So today's class, another 2-hour class, students got a lot done. The girl who's using the ironbark, she got her smaller frames routed out for her panels, and then got all the biscuit joints cut for actually putting the carcass of that together. I'm waiting for the track saw before we actually attempt that. The student who's using doing the resin table, I did a lot of relief cuts in this before the students came in so that he could chisel it out. It was just a little too thick for the moment. Waterfall table has been glued up and it's got its little back braces in. The student who was the last to start actually has his glued up. He had a free period in the morning and asked if I was free, and I was, so we jumped in here and he got all his little routed housings and rebate joints cut. A rebate at the top, a couple of housings there. He's going to have a front and a back put on as well. This student here, we got all these pieces cut for his drawers and his drawer runners. So he'll be putting all of those in. He got them pre-drilled, so we'll be putting in his drawer runners tomorrow and his drawer pieces. Oh, the student who's doing the one who's also doing the resin table, he got all of his joints cut for the leg frame that's down the bottom, so he's got double tenons using the domino. And the girl using the jarrah, she started getting her holes drilled for her connector points. She's using nut inserts and then decorative brass bolts through the outside, so she got a lot of those drilled. I only ordered those yesterday and they arrived this morning, so that was really good. She needed some longer ones than what I actually had. Yeah, it was a hectic, basically because that other student came in early, it was a hectic 3 hours. It's amazing how much they actually got done and how they helped each other and all that sort of stuff. So looks like that deadline's not going to be too bad after all. Hopefully. It's Wednesday. The student who had glued up his job yesterday, we came in this morning, took all his clamps off, and he hadn't used nearly enough glue in the top, which was just as well because it was a little bit, about 5mm out of alignment. And I had a look at it and went, oh no, this is not going to work. Gave it a tap and the whole thing just popped off. So he was lucky in that sense. So it's been re-glued up, and his bottom joint didn't seem to have much glue in it as well because it was coming out of the housing, so we put more glue into those as well. He's going to have solid front and backs on them and like have cubby holes cut out of them instead. So those are those pieces there, and they're going to be joined on with just biscuits for alignment and that sort of thing, and a lot of glue. So he got all the biscuit joints cut in along the edges, so that's all ready to be done. The waterfall table is looking good. Got the little hutch on it. It's going to put a little bit of plywood across the back of the hutch, but that came out of the clamps, and I think it's got a fairly nice effect of the grain flowing around it. The joint's not as tight as we might have liked, but I think with a bit of sanding and that sort of stuff, that'll come up all right. So that's coming along really well. This is part of the large desk with all the drawers in it, so she got one sort of panel glued in. Made the realisation today that she won't have room for putting in drawer runners and stuff. She's already glued one of her boxes up, her drawers. Hasn't glued the rest, so she could technically that's just dawned on me. She can, because she hasn't glued them up, she could alter the size of the drawers and be able to still have mechanical runners on there for a smoother finish rather than having drawers just slide on timber. Because she said today she wanted the drawers that you push and they pop back out. So I'll have to tell her that that's still rescuable. There was only one of her she's only glued up one of the drawers. See, talking about these things gets my mind working it over. A blanket box. She cut all of her biscuit joints for joining them up yesterday, and today gave them a dry fit to check all the alignments. There was just one joint that wasn't lined up, so she needs to fix that up, but it all goes together well. So in our next lesson she'll have to just fix up these. I still haven't got the tracks all back, haven't heard from them. At some point we'll get her panels cut to be able to go in there. I think we'll get her to chisel the corners so they're square rather than trying to round off the plywood. There was a couple of students who weren't here, so there was no progress on their jobs. And I don't think I have them again until Monday. But I have said, if I'm not on class and they have a free, to come and see me. And I think a couple of them are going to do that tomorrow. On my way into work, I just picked up Max's engine head from the place where I got it pressure tested, and he said it's fine. No cracks in the head, no leaks out through the valves or anything like that. So the head's fine. So it looks like that bottom gear on the drive shaft is what the issue
or the main issue probably was. So I've got to get that fixed up. I think as I'm putting this together, putting the motor back together, I'll see if I can replace like hoses that are a little bit worn and old and cracked and that sort of stuff. One actually broke trying to take it off the carburetor. I guess the good news is that the head is okay. He said leaks around the valves could be a reason for a drop in pressure, like the valve's not seating. But considering the engine head had only been reconditioned a few years ago, I really don't think that there's going to be too much of an issue with the valves not seating. I'll have to see if there's a way of me investigating that. But work first. Another professional development afternoon for the college. They had organised for a guy from ACARA, who's the Australian Curriculum Authority. They're writing all our new curriculums from across the whole country. And in particular, this guy was talking to us about the new digital technologies with the coding and that sort of stuff. And he's working with schools to help them get the staff upskilled, and he's working one of our campuses. And so he said that because he's working with one of the campuses, he's able to work with all of us. So we're going to try and organise some training next term to get my faculty upskilled with different ways of using coding, Arduinos, some MakerBits, I think was the one he was talking about, different sensors and all that sort of stuff. So that should be fun to look forward to next term. And the other good news thing is I got a call at the school which left a message to say that the cord has been replaced on the Festool track saw. So I've just picked that up, it's in the back of the car. So year 12, the students who still need to cut up large panel stuff can get back on with doing that job. It's a nice brand new cord, it's flash. As for what happened at school today, the construction class continued to dig the trenching in the concrete slab formwork, and we've had a bit of rain so the ground had softened up, so that was helpful for them. But then in the middle of the day we had an ADOC assembly for the whole school and the primary school and some visiting schools as well. For anybody from Australia, they'll understand what an ADOC is. Anybody outside Australia, recognising all of the things that the Indigenous people of Australia have done and try and do some recognition and some reconciliation, that sort of thing. So this year's one, our ceremony was held out in the playground and it was fantastic. Had some of the kids dancing, had an Indigenous singer turn up and sing a few songs, and it was a great day. And having it out in the playground on the grass, under the trees and that sort of stuff was much better than being in the concrete quad. A lot of people commented on that. Sunday arvo. We had some things to do yesterday, so we were out for most of the morning, and when we got back, my allergies and hay fever had just been absolutely shocking. My back and my neck. So yesterday afternoon was just a chill out. This morning, again, allergies, hay fever, still just going crazy, and I'm pretty sure it's from cutting up that log at school, doing all the relief cuts, and even though I was wearing dust masks and stuff, I still got a lot of it in me. What I've come out here to do today, and I'll turn it around, I've been cleaning out this, and I've used some needle files, I've used a couple of little attachments on my little rotary tool to just try and clean this out. Used a little burr to try and rough up where it's worn over, and I am going to try and weld with the gasless MIG. I was going to try and do it at school, but trying to do stuff that isn't school work related at school has been a little bit difficult lately, so I'm going to try and weld this with the gasless MIG and hopefully be able to just get a fair bit of welding here and then file back the keyway. Like I said, I've got a key to basically keep testing it in. And at least this way, once I'm trying to get the fit right, I can run up to the van and test it out on the drive shaft. So that's what I'm just going to have a go at doing now. They splatter a lot. Might see if I can get a little bit of a die grind and grind that back on the curve, and then add some more. And because I know the last time I did this, I didn't get a whole lot in there. Just got to make sure I get the flux out of it. Well, that's not doing much to that. Let's see what other options I've got. Just going to make sure that these are actually holding really well. This last thing I want, like that. That's what I thought. So I kind of had that trouble last time, that I could weld really close to this end, but not right in the middle. I'll get some acetone and I'll clean that off a bit again, to make sure that I'm actually going to have something that the weld can try and weld to, and not just something that's dirty. This filing job's going to take some time, so I'll catch you after. That helped a little bit. Okay, well that took some time to do. I managed to get that filed out, and you notice, if you notice these bits, that's where the bottom of the key was actually worn as well from the old. So the bottom of the keyway was worn, where the old key had basically rolled into it. This surface is much better. Okay, so it's a nice firm fit now, and has metal all the way along it. I think in the keyway, I think it actually sits like that inside the engine, inside the drive shaft. So now I'm going to go and take this gear up and see if it still fits on the shaft. Okay, so there's the keyway on the front end of the drive shaft. Got the gear, and it goes on nice. So that means that I've actually haven't left any bad high spots in the inside of it. There's some wear in it because it's not perfectly seated, and if at that point there, that's when the inner keyway and the outer keyway are in place. That's okay. And I put this in here. You can see how tight it is on this side. Now as shaft turns this way, and you see the gap here, when that's all the way right up against there, there's a gap here. Now the key's not really moving, but all of that, the gap on this side is from the key basically being pulled over. Now this time I don't want to have to take the bottom end all out because that involves
having to remove the drive shaft to the rear wheels, then unbolt the gearbox, swing the gearbox back, and then remove the sump, all of the bottom end bearings and bearing holders for both front and rear end, so that I can take the shaft out in order to re-weld that.
That's not something that I really want to do this time. In case you hadn't noticed, if you look down there, that's the road. The van is just basically sitting up on the road in front of my house because I don't have a workshop. And having ripped down the engine once up here and doing all that once before, it's not something I want to do again. So I am actually going to try the metal putty in here this time. This is nowhere near as bad as it was the first time. The first time when that had happened, this was opened right out, and I had to like fill in all of this with weld, which I did last time. But even then, like, people at the garages and the spare parts place and a few others have even said, like, need a little bit of the putty, shove it into there, place the key in to get the shape right, then take the key out, and then once that's shaped, it can be filed and shaped around. I don't want to use too much because I don't want to be filing for too long, but I do want this to be as tight a fit as possible when I put the gear back on. I've just done a very quick check of these valve clearances as well by rotating the head around, and at the moment, I had to make sure I got it back to top dead center on the first cylinder. These are both closed because it's up on the compression. This fires 1, 3, 4, 2. 2 is currently opening up the exhaust because it's about to punch all the exhaust out of it after this one gets pushed down with the fire. 3 is just on the opening side of the intake, is about to close, so it's just sucked in its fuel.
When one fires down, this one's going to push up and compress it. This is going to close really quickly, and then it's going to fire down, and yeah, so I just have to make sure I got this all back in the right order. So 2 is just fired, and that's why it's about to, like, it's on the pushing out the exhaust. As soon as 1 punches down, it's going to start pushing out the exhaust because this is about, it started opening, but it's about to open up fully.
And if you weren't aware of where the valve clearance gets checked, the cam basically pushes this down, which pushes it down against the springs. When these are closed, there needs to be a little bit of clearance here, and there's a set distance that should be, when it's a warm engine, this is meant to be 12 thousandths of an inch, or 0.3 of a millimetre. These feeler gauges between my pops have got both of those marked on it, so I've just checked these. This valve clearance should be 0.3 of a millimetre or 12 thousandth. You can just see this is just a little bit over 0.3 and 12 thousandths. So while that's on their clearance side, this should slip in. And they say you should do the measurement when it's warm, because these components will warm up a bit. So once this all gets reinstalled and everything's been put back together, apart from maybe the rocker cover, I'll run it, get the engine warm a little bit, and then I'll double check these, that this slips in and out while the engine's being warmed up, and these might expand slightly. Because if this is too close, like, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but if it's too close, then it means that your valve isn't getting to close completely, and that can cause a loss of compression as well. That's me trying to figure out why I'm lost compression oomph, as well as the fact that I've had an engine that stopped running. Okay, this form is almost done. We've cut some extra Rio for going down into the trenches to help strengthen those up. There's the reinforcement for the slab, and there's all our little pieces that they cut up for reinforcing the trenches, and we're almost there. There's just a few bits like this area here that needs to be cleared out just a little bit deeper.
Had Year 12 for a 1 hour class today. This one's got timber draw runners put in almost completely, so we've still got this side to go. They're in and they're looking like they're going to do their job well. This one with a solid front and back. We cut out just with a jigsaw roughly the base, and then you'll use a flush trim router to trim that smooth with the sides and the bottom of the shelf. After seeing it though, I'm thinking in hindsight, these might have looked a little better if they'd stayed as a thicker leg, just because of the rest of his design, but a nice clean look there should be nice. Slight alignment issue just here at the top, which we'll try and rectify tomorrow. We cut his front piece the same, but we've still got to map out where the cubby holes are going to go into the front and back. The student using the iron bark, she had it setting up on this table, getting it ready to sort of put together and glue all up, and this particular panel just fell straight off and down on the floor, and 3 of the joints popped. And when we looked at it, there was glue over the whole joint, but it had just soaked into the end grain of the iron bark really quite well. We were able to basically knock them apart a little bit. Actually, 3 of them, the 3 joints that popped, we actually were able to knock apart completely, so she could get a really good new glue joint on them all. So that was a slight setback for her, but in the meantime, planned out her ply to make sure that she's able to get all of her panels out of the one sheet, which she is able to, so that's a bonus. The girl doing the giant desk only realised later that she'd put the grain going this way, so all of her panels are going to be going front to back rather than following straight up and down, just to keep the aesthetic the same across the whole job. The pond table is still basically sitting at this point, or he's going to have that other log in there, which means that most of this is going to be open unless he chooses to put one of these pieces back in. He dry fit all of his joints together to see if the frame would go together. There was one that was slightly out, so he just recut it, and that's fine. So now he's just in the process of starting to pre-sand everything before gluing it all up, because of the dye that's basically on some of this construction timber. So he's got to sand that back as much as he can. The girl working with the jarrah was absent today, so no progress on hers. Waterfall table still sitting where it is.
She's trying to figure out what sort of a finish she wants to put on it. She's thinking she wants to really just do a clear coat, which means it's going to have to be really well sanded. We might have to do something with the front, especially where that printing is.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That's all of them. This I don't have them again tomorrow, but I do have them for a 2-hour lesson on Wednesday, where hopefully this job will get glued up and she can prepare her panels. It has been a really busy week. Today is Friday, and the last time I had the Year 12s was on Wednesday. I got this one, he's got his back glued on, so that's on. We'll be able to drill some holes for cables and stuff, and we'll figure out his front when we come back. It's actually, today's Friday, last day of term, we've got a 2-week break. The ironbark blanket chest, that's all been glued up. She got those joints figured out, and we got the ply panels all cut to go in. They just need to be, she's going to round the corners off on the plywood to put these in, so that'll be a little bit less work than having to chisel out these corners. Base and all the sides have been cut. She needs to make the top now because we can now measure it to fit. The large desk has had a couple of extra panels glued in, so that's going to be ready for putting in drawers. She's going to try and get her drawer runners over the break. Again, unfortunately, the Jarrah clothing unit, the girl was away for most of the week and missed every lesson, so that's taken a stall. She's missed basically 4 hours of work. Waterfall desk has been getting a sand. We're going to do some thin timber strips to cover. She's decided to do that, especially at the front, so that it's a nicer look. Not that looking at plywood isn't that nice, but she doesn't want that look in the front, so she's going to do a front, probably just a pine to match the timber. These drawer runners got completed, and he's got all the sides cut. He now just needs to measure exactly for where the front and back of the drawers are going to go in between the sides, and then he will have a false front on all of the drawers out of one sheet of plywood, so there's a continuous grain across the front. The lake table, island table, whatever he wants to call it, he's got all these pieces set in here now to try and work out the volume that he was going to require for resin in here, and it turned out to be a lot more than he expected. I think we worked out he was going to need at least 25 litres worth. In Australia, 25 litres worth, I think the kit was 30 litres, $900. We thought about trying to get some extra islands in here, filling it up, trying to reduce it down to the next level, which was 15 litres, which is $500. And then I suggested that we'll try and get this scoop down to about a 40mm thickness, and he's going to do instead, I think this is what he's going to do. Some sand in the bottom. We've got some bricky sand, which is a nice white sand. Then he's going to put his gravel and the coloured stones and that sort of stuff that he wants to have in there. We'll level it all out, put the decorative hardwood timber around the outside, and we're going to get some toughened glass as a tabletop instead. So if he ever wants to change what's inside it, he can do that. But that was a much more economical option for him. Which means that really this form will have to come off after the break, and he'll work on the timber edging, maybe get all these things routed down first and work from there. Which also means that we don't have to worry about trying to keep it in a dust-free environment for doing the epoxy pour, which is a bonus, but again, it was something that would have been nice to experiment with, and I think it would have looked really good. Being the last day of term, I do enjoy sharpening. Sometimes I find it therapeutic, but I don't enjoy sharpening this much stuff. So I've put together a box of all the saws and chisels from the 3 workshops. We've got 2 timber workshops in the construction room, and all of the plane blades as well. And I'm going to get them professionally sharpened over the break. They're coming to collect them in the next 15 minutes, and then they will disappear for the holidays, and they will be returned day 1 of school next term. Nice and sharp, ready to take slices of timber and possibly student fingers.